moving on to sort of our final section of the program, batting cleanup today is my colleague Amy put this fact in here that I'm just amazed. 90% of Americans live within 30 minutes of a Walmart retail store. And so Walmart is really, as an American, a brand as you can get, and it's a brand that every American has proximity to, almost every American, 90%. And so, Brynt, I put you in here at Cleanup today, and you're the Senior Director of Military and STEM Programs. And this role, you are charged with recruiting, developing, and retaining military and STEM talent for meaningful careers at Walmart. And there's a lot of careers at Walmart that are really interesting. And we've done a lot of really cool partnerships with you guys this year. You heard President Rosenberg call you guys out. We've are really excited about the work that we're going to be doing next year with Walmart. And I think that what you guys are doing around strategic sourcing, when we were going through and deciding on what kind of content we wanted to introduce, it was a no-brainer to my colleague Amy Etten and myself that we should extend an invite to you to talk about the work that you're doing. So I'm pleased to welcome you to the show, and thank you so much for speaking and taking us up on our invitation.
Thank you, Ted, and thanks to the whole crew, Amy, Joe, everybody at STEMconnector. It's wonderful to be here. I also want to just say that the previous panel was fantastic. Tom, I was a previous workforce development director for one of the National Manufacturing Institutes called NextFlex, and we worked with Dallas County Community College District, many others. And then Shelley, my wife and I, she's from Charleston, West Virginia, and has a long lineage from WVU. So it's just kind of neat seeing both the personal and professional connections of that panel as well. So with the group today, I'm going to just talk for about 15 minutes. I'm going to share some slides. I'm going to actually try to do something that is probably going to be a disaster, but I'm going to try it anyway, which is to actually do some little whiteboard drawing as part of this, and just go through how we're thinking about this and how we're crafting new approaches to reach STEM talent. Before I do, I'll give a little bit of background for the group. Walmart, as Ted talked about, we have a lot of customers and members that visit our stores and clubs every year, 10,500 across the world. We have 48 banners in 24 countries and e-commerce websites. We have a little over $500 billion a year in revenue, and of the 2.3 million associates worldwide, about 1.2 million are in the US. We also have, as they talked about, 90% of Americans live within 10 miles of Walmart or a Sam's Club, and that's what people see. But as we look at, when we get a little bit past what you see in the brick and mortar stores, since we put in our first point of sale system 40 years ago, the technology side and the STEM side of Walmart has grown parallel to the business in a really number of interesting ways. Our core mission as we think about technology is to help people save money and live better. And this is at the heart of all the ideas on how we're entering and continuing into the 21st century and beyond. And whether it's drone technologies or the omni-channel world that we live in, where you can go into a store, you can scan things with your phone and have it shipped. You can do scan and go in both stores and clubs, where you aren't necessarily having to interact with anyone other than yourself, your shopping cart, and your items, and just a range of different things that we do that makes the company a really interesting landscape for technology-based careers to unfold. A couple of things that most people don't really realize about Walmart, that we don't do we don't put a lot of effort into advertising this, but a lot of technology that we do goes into some social good. Whenever there's a disaster across the country, an environmental disaster, for instance, a hurricane, Walmart is who FEMA calls, and we respond significantly. We have technology that helps us understand when a hurricane hits, where people are going to be evacuated to, and we can activate our supply chain to reroute items to those locations so that people, they aren't going to where people were, they're going to where people are. Those are just a couple of examples of the way that technology is used to help get back to that core idea of saving money and helping people live better. I do want to talk about an example of some of the technology. This is our global tech realm, so I'll stick to that today, but this technology advancement comes across our enterprise in a number of other areas, in particular supply chain and Walmart Health, our store operations. But in the technology space, one of the most interesting areas and that we've had a lot of fun with STEM talent has been our retail and emerging tech areas. You can see where some of the disciplines that fall within this, whether it's pulling the customer backbone together and the insights that help improve an individual's experience as they interact with the organization. We do a lot with small businesses through our marketplace, and then use that as a gateway to people to have their products and items on our shelves. We also are going into an ad technology and social commerce business, the merchant technology. The transaction systems are incredibly just expansive to be able to handle those over 10,000 stores and clubs across the country, and then all of the online systems that go into that. And then a range of emerging technologies, whether it's conversational AI, AR, or VR, as you can see there. So all of this requires STEM talent. And the STEM talent for the future, we've been looking at this over the past couple of years, and about 6 months ago, we landed on a new approach to how we're thinking about things. We had to ask ourselves, one, do we have a problem in acquiring STEM talent? I think we would be foolish to say we couldn't do better. And like most companies who have this insatiable demand for STEM-based talent right now, we wanted to figure out what is the best way to frame that problem, and then what was the best way to move forward through all of that. So I'm gonna stop sharing and start sharing a whiteboard and just draw through this with everybody for a moment on how we've thinking about this and our whole process. And like most companies, we have to think about the world from the demand side over here. We are looking at the labor market and all of the actors within it, whether you're on the .com, .gov, .edu, .mil, or .org side of things, from this lens, looking this direction. And we then think about the supply side and this whole labor market and the pathways that connect the two. And we know that for our part, we have a number of different segments that are large and small throughout our organization, and each one of those segments needs a bunch of different people or holes filled to be able to do our mission of helping customers save money and live better. And as you look at this direction, this demand drives how we're thinking about it. We know that there's been a traditional set of recruiting and populations that are out here, and we think of the supply as both traditional and non-traditional. And we think of the pathways that connect the two. If this is representing that space, this thread here is how most people are recruited into the business, where a recruiter, a business partner builds a requisition, that recruiter carries it over, they investigate the normal traditional pools of talent, and then they try to walk that person through the recruiting process to a transaction of an offer. And what we wanted to think about at Walmart was to be competitive, and even more competitive in this space was look at this whole ecosystem and figure out how we could start thinking more out here. How could we think about the non-traditional talent and not go through necessarily where we're not going to hire a whole new range of recruiters, but how could we take people that are transitioning out of the military in one of these pools? How could we think of returnship individuals? How could we think about people who don't have necessarily 4-year degrees in this space, but have the skills or use skills-based hiring to approach this, in 2-year colleges and other partners that are out here that help us access? If we could draw some circles and corral some of this talent, how do we engage them on the one hand? And then how do we bring them through a pathway that's parallel to the traditional recruiting, but not quite the same? And a couple of examples of what we've done is we've, for instance, built, in the first time in Walmart's 60-year history, 2 weeks ago, we launched a tech apprenticeship program, a DOL registered apprenticeship program, where we're able to take individuals through and put them into the roles through a 3.5-month set of related training instruction up front, and then a 9-month OJT with one of our strategic partners, and pull people in. We're piloting with 10 people. Over 50% were diverse, what would be considered diverse hires, very competitive wage up front. And then the idea is we bridge them into full-time entry-level software engineers at the end of the apprenticeship. And we built it in a way that if we need to, we can scale that out from 10 this month and starting the program. We could scale that out in 90 days to 500 to 1,000 people, which is more in line with what our scale of demand looks like. We've also looked at other opportunities. As an example, Florida International University, we started a STEM challenge. We wanted to reach out to a population that had previously and is likely going to be recruited traditionally, but we wanted to get a little bit upstream and work with them on a STEM challenge, get a Walmart problem in front of them in conjunction with their classroom activities, and work them through this challenge where they're connecting with our talent and business partners throughout the process. And then at the final process, we can work what might be that final transaction and offer process to meet some form of demand in the business. We're looking at a number of other ways we go about this, whether it's diversity boot camps, whether it's in the data science and the software development and the product management space. In particular, we're also looking at maintenance technicians for both equipment and our transportation fleet and ways we can go through similar processes there. And then in our Walmart Health Systems, how do we get at pharmacy technicians, opticians, and other things that we need to keep our customer service in an effective manner? So we really don't want to take and prevent this line of activity that's in the center here, this traditional populations and recruiting. We want to disadvantage that, but we want to expand that box out into much of this non-traditional population. And we couldn't do that without, one, the strategic partners like STEMconnector and others that are helping us identify and access these pools of talent. And then we can work internally on our systems, both HR and people systems, and on the business side to help pull essentially the business partners into the engagements over here and then work through non-traditional pathways to pull the talent back parallel to these traditional ones. So I'm going to stop sharing that and then reshare the slides. And if there's any questions, if you start popping them into the chat, be happy to talk through that. So as we looked through all of that new framework and how we framed it and the best way to move forward, we really realized that we were sitting in a good position because of our scale to think through this re-envision strategy. It has had a lot of interest in the business, and it gives a much better way for us to create an all ships rising approach to where our hiring managers, the subject matter experts across the different technology domains and the business segments are able to connect with the recruiters and the non-recruiting talent partners to access these non-traditional populations we previously just didn't have a good way to do it. We obviously are focusing on in-demand roles as a start point for that conversation, as we described. And we said we don't want to replace traditional recruiting. We simply want to augment it. We know that people will want to bounce between these different activities. And in many cases, people could fall into both traditional and non-traditional at the same time. We really shifted over the past couple of years from in the K-12 space. We did a lot of work previously with different groups, but we've had to shift from a business ROI standpoint on focusing on ready now and near ready talent as just a business imperative in this current space. And then finally, we talked about it. We really, really want to focus on prospecting the non-traditional talent and then working with a range of partners to do that. We're excited to work with Joe and the STEMconnector team on the Atlas program. One of the things we're thinking about, and as that concept unfolds, is how we can build in these challenges that our business creates, that students can access, work on, and then engage with both mentors from the business, help them understand what their future environment's going to be, help them do an audit of where they're at now in their studies and their skills, and then help connect them through talent partners to the conversations that lead to full and meaningful employment with the business. So they're just a couple of things that are on our minds. I know I went through that very quickly. I wanted to leave some time for questions for a couple of minutes if there are any. But with that, I will stop sharing and see if there's any thoughts. Ted, Amy, anything that you could think of that you'd like me to cover in the last few minutes, but that's how we're looking at it at Walmart. We look forward to partnering with any number of the folks that are on this call, as well as STEMconnector in the future, and how we get that done.
Awesome, Brynt. Thank you very much. I don't know if I'm looking at the questions and looks like, and we are kind of approaching the end of the program. So I think Brynt is very open to, as he said, outreach. So we will, make sure to facilitate those connections on request, as is embedded in our name. Thanks, Brynt. You can see Brynt put his email there. So Brynt, thank you so much. And I guess I will I have a couple things I want to cover before we end.